Hey folks, how you doing? I started making a raised bed today, and I just wanted to show you folks a really quick and easy way to build raised beds on the cheap. So let's get into it. I want to build a bed that was 3 feet by 3 feet, and then I bought these tulip bulbs, which I'm going to be planting inside the bed. And my goal is basically to start creating 3 by 3 foot beds for using for cut flowers. So this is the first one I'm going to build, but then I want to move on and hopefully build some more down the road. If you were going to be building beds for vegetable gardening, you would want to make your beds like 4 feet by 4 feet. 3 feet by 3 feet is a little bit smaller than the efficient use of your lumber, because you're going to be buying lumber that's 8 feet long. So I'm basically wasting 2 feet of lumber, but I really didn't want to have beds any bigger than this. But if you're thinking of making a raised bed for vegetable gardening, think 4 by 4 feet, or you could do like a 4 by 8 foot bed if you wanted to, but you really don't want to go any more to reach into a bed than 2 feet at a time. So the maximum width I would go would be 4 feet. Building them is so simple. All you need to do is go to your local home center and pick up some lumber. Right here I'm using 2-inch by 10-inch by 8 foot long lumber, and then I just brought the pieces home and cut them into 3 foot strips. And then all you're going to basically do is you just, if you follow it down, you basically make an L. You're not like doing 2 parallel and then filling the gap. You come down, put 1 at the bottom like that, and then you come down, you put 1 at the bottom like that, and then you come up and do 1 at the bottom like that. So there's 3 screws on the end here. You're always screwing into another board. You don't need any braces, you don't need anything else. You just need 3 screws per end, and you want to make sure you make your cuts as square as possible. The difference in price between a 2 by 10 board and a 2 by 8 board, there's a fairly steep jump. It's okay if you want to go ahead and use a 2 by 8 to make these raised beds, especially if you're going to be like growing a vegetable garden. You can always dig out some of the poor soil underneath and then put some better garden soil on top of that. The inside depth would actually be here, so we're actually going to be about 34.5 inches wide. It's really trivial in the end, but I know there's some people like myself that want to, take all this into account. I like to use stainless screws for putting these together, and the reason is because all these treated screws, you don't really know what is on the screws. So if you're using the screws for like a vegetable garden, you don't want some of the chemicals in your screws to end up leaching into the soil, growing the vegetables you're going to eat. I prefer to use stainless screws, and I found a number 10 by 2.5 inch screw worked really good for me. This is actually a deck drive DWP wood stainless steel screw by Simpson Strong Tie. But the cool thing about these screws is you don't have to pre-drill, because there's a little bit of weld on the end of the screw bit here. So as you're drilling this in, it's going to actually pre-drill the hole for itself. So if you don't pre-drill wood, sometimes it's going to split on you, but by using these screws, you don't have to worry about it. I got the raised bed outside, and a couple tips here. You really want to put your raised beds a minimum of about 4 feet apart. I have tried raised beds closer than that, and especially if you're growing vegetables, but by the time the plants grow over the edge, by the middle to the end of the season, you're going to lose about a foot on either side. So your path is going to basically shrink as time goes by. So more is always better than less regarding spacing. And then I put a level on this one, and we're doing okay as far as the level. Hopefully you guys are seeing that. If your raised beds, they don't have to be perfectly level, but if you want to take the time to level them, all you need to do is just get a flat shovel and scrape out the side where it's low. And you don't have to be super fancy. Just tip it up, scrape it out, and move it down. And then if your other side needs to come up a touch, what you can do is actually get like a flat rock and put a few flat rocks on the other side. And then once you get it pretty close, if you need to tweak it, just take your foot or take a sledgehammer. Don't hit it too hard, but whichever side you want to go down, just tap it a few times on the side you want to go down. You can see my footprint on this edge where I tapped it down a bit. The situation here is so ideal that I really didn't have to do anything. I mean, that's well within acceptable tolerances. The next step, which I kind of skipped, was I checked with my wife and made sure everything's good. She gave me approval, so I'm gonna go ahead and put some soil in the bed, but because I'm planting tulips, I'm gonna just put some soil in the bottom, put my tulip bulbs in there, and then cover them over. I would recommend filling them to like 1 inch of the surface, because no matter what you do, eventually they're gonna settle. Because the edges of the beds aren't super high, all you need to do to fill them up is just bring the wheelbarrow and just dump it over the edge and push the soil to the middle. Those of you that are gardeners may know that I'm a little bit late planting my tulips. I really meant to be doing this last fall or at the latest a month or two ago, but my goal for this raised bed was to fill it with some tulips, and I'm going to use this as a cut flower garden, if not for this year, for next. So I got my tulips in, and now I just need to cover them with 4 or 5 inches of soil. All right, folks, well, I finished filling up the bed and I left it about 1 inch or 2 from the top. But don't be surprised if you fill your raised bed and over the course of the season, it'll sink down like another 1 inch or 2. That's perfectly normal and there's really nothing you can do about it. And if you're doing a garden like this, you really want to avoid packing the soil a lot, because that's the one of the many benefits of a raised bed is you never walk on the soil, so it always stays nice and loose and friable. Just a couple more things I wanted to share before we go. I learned about raised bed gardening like this back in the 80s. There was a book called Square Foot Gardening by Mel Bartholomew, who sadly, I believe he did pass away, but the book is still around and I'm sure there's some revised editions. So if you like the idea of growing a vegetable garden in a raised bed, I highly recommend you get a book called Square Foot Gardening by Mel Bartholomew. I'll put a link down in the description if you want to check it out. What I'm going to be doing is creating like maybe 4 raised beds and see if I can plant some flowers for cut flowers and just have like a nice neat spot to grow cut flowers and not feel guilt that I'm cutting too many from around the garden. If you live in Connecticut, in southwestern Connecticut, in Milford, Connecticut, there's a place called Grillo Green Cycle, and they actually sell custom mixes for like garden soil, which are mixes of like topsoil and compost. I haven't really looked at the website in a while, but what a lot of people will do is they'll just grab the paper and order topsoil, thinking all topsoil is the same, and it really isn't. So you want to make sure you go actually look at the topsoil you're going to purchase before you use it in your garden. If you purchase inferior soil and put it in your raised beds, you're just wasting your time. I mean, the only way to really improve a lousy soil is going to just be to dig it out and start fresh. So I highly recommend you spend a lot of time finding a good source of soil to fill your raised beds with. But again, in Connecticut, look for Grillo Green Cycle. I believe they're in Milford, Connecticut, and they'll deliver all the way down to like Greenwich, and like pretty much within 45 minutes drive of Milford, Connecticut. Last time I spoke to them, you could get a delivery, and whatever they're charging, it's great soil and worth the investment. The last thing I want to do is I'm just going to give you some shots of some raised beds I did build 3 or 4 years ago. I grew vegetables in them for a while, but it really wasn't enough light in that spot, so I stopped. But just to give you an idea of what you can do with raised beds, and again, in that circumstance, I was using square foot gardening. Hi folks, it is mid-April, a year later, and I'm happy to say that the Darwin Hybrid Tulips came up beautifully. It's a funny story. When I planted these, it was fairly late in the season. I don't remember what month it was when I built this little bed, but after planting the tulips, they basically didn't come up. I only saw tulip growth from a few of them. Because they're such a tough plant, they did all of a sudden just show up this spring. You'll see there's a little bit of catmint growing in this bed, and there's also a little bit of meadow rue. I think I saw some over here, and that's just kind of mixed in with my compost. It shows up everywhere, but here we go. You know, we've got all these beautiful tulips in this bed. They're a little bit small this year. It's their first year. They'll re-energize, hopefully come back stronger and bigger next year. And I will have this lovely bed of cut flowers for years to come. Take care, folks. Thanks for watching.